You see, when we talk about strength, real, unshakable strength, it's important to understand that it's not about becoming a stone, immune to pain, nor about pretending that nothing can touch you. It's about redefining what it means to feel, to experience, and to respond. There's a profound difference between enduring life and mastering your place within it, and that difference begins with perception. Most people move through life bracing for pain. They expect disappointment, betrayal, criticism. They tighten their hearts in anticipation of being hurt, as if flinching early might somehow soften the blow. But all that does is keep them in a permanent state of emotional defense, like a soldier at war in their own mind. That's not strength. That's fear masquerading as preparation. To act as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you does not mean you deny the existence of pain. Pain is real, loss is real, rejection, failure, heartbreak. They are part of the human experience, but you get to decide how deeply they define you. This is where perception comes into play. Because when you perceive the world as a threat, you become reactive, fragile, overly sensitive to the slightest wound. But when you perceive yourself as inherently untouchable, not because you're blind to life's challenges, but because you trust your ability to transcend them, you begin to step into a different kind of power. Florence Scovel Shinn once said, "No man is your friend, no man is your enemy, every man is your teacher." That idea has depth. It means that nothing happens to you, everything happens for your growth, even the seemingly painful parts. When you see hurt not as personal destruction but as curriculum, life showing you where you're still giving your power away, then you stop living in fear of it. You start becoming the student instead of the victim. And this is where true strength begins. Not with defiance, not with denial, but with the ability to observe pain without being consumed by it. When someone disrespects you, when a door closes, when the world says no, do you crumble? Or do you remember that your worth was never in their hands to begin with? Strength is not about refusing to fall. It's about falling and remembering every time that you can stand back up with grace, dignity, and clarity. You train this perception the way a pianist trains their hands, daily, consciously, with discipline. You catch yourself when your thoughts spiral into fear. You notice when you seek reassurance from people who haven't earned that role in your life. And most importantly, you start to hold a new posture in your mind, one that says, "I am safe within myself. I am rooted in something deeper than external approval or conditions." You begin to act as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you, not to dismiss reality, but to create a reality in which hurt has no lasting power over you. You walk into rooms without shrinking. You make choices not from fear of rejection, but from alignment with your values. You speak as if you believe you deserve to be heard, because you do. And when something stings, you feel it, but you don't feed it. This is perception-based strength. It's not loud, it's not reactive, it's quiet, calm, certain, and that certainty becomes your shield. Not a barrier that isolates, but an aura that protects. So if you take only one thing from this, let it be this: you don't become invincible by avoiding pain. You become invincible by changing what pain means to you. Let it shape you, but never shatter you. And from that place, walk like someone who knows the world can't take what it never gave you. Let that be your posture. Let that be your peace. So often when people hear the phrase, "act as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you," they assume it means shutting down, turning cold, becoming emotionally unavailable or detached. But let's be clear, that's not strength, that's a form of emotional paralysis. What I'm talking about isn't detachment in the sense of withdrawal or denial. It's about emotional mastery. It's emotional intelligence, not as a concept, but as a lived discipline. True emotional intelligence means you feel everything, but you are ruled by nothing. It's not about being unaffected. It's about being undisturbed. There's a difference. You don't repress your emotions, but you also don't hand them the wheel. You recognize them, you sit with them, but you don't allow them to dictate who you are or how you respond to the world. Most people are emotionally reactive. Someone says something harsh and they lash out. Someone pulls away and they cling. Someone disappoints them, and they spiral. Why? Because they're letting external events govern their internal state. It's like walking around with exposed wires, constantly sparking every time someone touches them. That's not freedom. That's enslavement to sensation. When you act as if nobody can hurt you, what you're really saying is, "I no longer outsource my emotional well-being." You stop letting people's moods, opinions, and actions hijack your inner world. You remain available, yes, but no longer vulnerable in a self-destructive way. Florence Scovel Shinn had this uncanny way of making spiritual truths simple. The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Our thoughts, deeds and words return to us sooner or later, with astounding accuracy. That includes how we respond emotionally. If we throw out fear, panic, and neediness, we invite more of the same. But when we project calm authority, when we respond instead of react, life starts meeting us at that level. You see, when you're emotionally intelligent, you become an interpreter of your feelings rather than a slave to them. Anger. It's often a boundary you've neglected. Sadness. A signal that something meaningful needs your attention. Jealousy. A pointer to unclaimed potential within you. These emotions are not enemies to conquer or suppress. They're messages, important ones. But you are the one who decides how to respond to the message. Now, compare that to emotional detachment, where you ignore the signals altogether. You tell yourself you don't care. You shut down. You build walls. That might protect you in the short term, but in the long term, it's a slow form of self-erasure. Because when you numb yourself to avoid pain, you also numb yourself to joy, intimacy, and meaning. That's not power. That's avoidance dressed in armor. Emotional intelligence, by contrast, allows you to engage fully, with life, with people, with your own heart, without being at their mercy. It's like being in the middle of a storm, and knowing that you are the calm eye at the center. The winds may rage, but you remain still, rooted, clear. And here's the truth most people miss: you can be deeply emotional and deeply stable at the same time. You can cry and still be powerful. You can love and still walk away. You can feel hurt and still act from integrity. That is the power of an emotionally intelligent person. They are not invulnerable, they are unshakable. There's a world of difference. So if you want to act as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you, don't go cold. Go clear. Know your emotions without becoming them. Let them pass through, not take over. That is the art. That is the game. And if you forget everything else I've said here, remember this: emotional control isn't the absence of feeling. It's the presence of awareness. Don't be less emotional. Be more conscious. That's how you stop being a prisoner of pain and start becoming the architect of peace. If you really want to act as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you, you have to begin with the most influential force in your life: your inner dialogue. That quiet, constant voice narrating your experience is either your liberation or your cage. And most people, without even knowing it, are being ruled by a voice that was trained in fear, scarcity, and self-doubt. You cannot build an unshakable life with a mind that constantly questions your worth. You cannot embody peace if your internal monologue is an ongoing script of fear and judgment. This is why I say train your inner dialogue like an athlete trains muscle. Not once in a while, not when you feel like it, but consistently, deliberately, with discipline and clarity of purpose. You become what you repeatedly say to yourself. That is not some abstract affirmation theory. It is psychological reality. The mind is pliable. Neuroplasticity is a fact. Your thought patterns, if rehearsed enough, become beliefs. And beliefs are not just ideas you hold. They are the filters through which you interpret the world. They shape what you expect, what you allow, what you pursue, and what you tolerate. Florence Scovel Shinn taught, the subconscious is simply power without direction. It is like steam or electricity, and it does what it is directed to do. Your thoughts are the directions. Every time you think, they don't like me. I always mess this up. I can't handle rejection. You're programming your subconscious with instructions to find evidence of that. And it will. That's not fate, it's the law of mind in action. The good news is, the reverse is also true. When you deliberately feed your inner dialogue thoughts of calm, courage, and stability, your entire nervous system begins to reflect that posture. You begin to expect ease. You begin to expect resilience. You begin to trust that even if things go wrong, you won't fall apart. That is not delusion. That is mental conditioning. Let me be clear: this is not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about anchoring your identity in something deeper than the moment. It's saying to yourself, not once, but daily, I am not here to be broken by life. I am here to respond with wisdom. You affirm the truth you want to embody, not because it's instantly true, but because you're training it into being. Start paying attention to how you speak to yourself. That voice in your mind. Would you let someone talk to your closest friend that way? Would you respect someone who constantly second-guessed, criticized, and berated you? No. then why tolerate it from yourself? Instead, become your own mental coach. Catch the thoughts that tear you down and consciously redirect them. Speak to yourself with strength and elegance. When fear arises, you say, "Thank you, I see you, but I'm choosing to move forward." When doubt creeps in, you answer, "Even if I'm uncertain, I trust myself to figure it out." This isn't just feel-good talk. This is the foundation of self-command. If you don't take control of your internal narrative, it will be written by your past, by your insecurities, by people who had no business shaping your story. And once you start mastering that inner voice, something beautiful happens. You stop looking for reassurance outside yourself. You stop needing the world to tell you you're safe, because you've already told yourself. So if you want to act like nothing and nobody can hurt you, start by becoming someone who speaks to themselves like a person who cannot be shaken. Use your voice, the one inside your head, to build something solid, something no one can take from you. The world listens to how you talk to yourself, and it responds accordingly. Speak with faith, not fear. That's how the inner world reshapes the outer one. One of the most liberating truths you'll ever accept is this: you do not need to be understood to be whole. You do not need to be approved of to be powerful. You do not need to be liked, loved, seen, or chosen in order to belong to yourself. And until you truly believe that, you'll always be vulnerable to people who have no business holding your self-worth in their hands. You see, acting as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you requires more than just emotional balance. It demands a deep reorientation of identity, away from others and back toward your own inner authority. Because most of the pain we experience doesn't come from what people do. It comes from what we believe their actions say about us. He left me, so I must be unlovable. She criticized me, so I must be inadequate. They excluded me, so I must be less than. But ask yourself, who told you that your value is something to be voted on? Who decided that your identity is up for public commentary? That's not truth, it's conditioning. From childhood, many of us are trained to seek approval like oxygen. We're rewarded for compliance, punished for difference, praised for performance, and made to believe that love is earned. And unless that belief is interrupted, it carries into adulthood, quietly, invisibly, relentlessly. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote, "You will be a failure until you impress the subconscious with the conviction you are a success." And you cannot impress the subconscious if your identity is built on external scaffolding. What they think of you cannot be the ground beneath your feet. Because the moment it shifts, and it will, you fall. To act as if nobody can hurt you, you must stop allowing people to become mirrors. People are not always honest, nor are they always conscious. Many project their wounds, their fears, their agendas. If you define yourself by that, you'll live in distortion. You'll be constantly adjusting, editing, performing for a validation that will never feel like enough, because it isn't the truth of who you are. Instead, your identity must be sourced from a deeper place. What I call inner ownership. This is the quiet, immovable knowing of who you are beneath your roles, your relationships, your titles, and your image. It's the self that remains even when applause fades, even when connection breaks, even when things fall apart. You carry it not with arrogance, but with spiritual certainty. This is not about becoming isolated or self-centered. It's about becoming self-led. When you know who you are, when you've defined yourself internally, you begin to move through the world with a certain grace. Rejection doesn't shake you. Criticism doesn't wound you. Praise doesn't inflate you. You're not easily swayed because you're not trying to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. And in that choice, you stop performing. You stop over-explaining. You stop shrinking or exaggerating to fit spaces that weren't built for the truth of your being. You realize that your worth is not a currency you trade for love. It is the essence you offer in love, freely and without fear. So when you walk into a room, you don't ask, "Will they like me?" You ask, "Do I feel aligned here?" When someone pulls away, you don't spiral. You simply say, "They're allowed to go. I remain." That's not indifference. That's sovereignty. Because once you own your identity from within, no one can take it from you. No silence, no betrayal, no failure can unmake you. You stop trying to protect yourself from the world. And instead, you start walking as yourself through it. And that is the deepest kind of protection there is. So remember this: the person who knows who they are cannot be manipulated. Let that be the standard. Let that be your anchor. We live in a culture that teaches us to avoid pain at all costs. We medicate it, distract from it, rationalize it, spiritualize it, anything but face it. But here's the truth: if you are afraid of pain, you are always negotiating with it. You're always tiptoeing through life, trying to avoid the very experiences that are meant to fortify you. And the irony is, that fear, not the pain itself, is what keeps you fragile. When I say, act as if nothing and nobody will ever hurt you, I don't mean you'll never encounter pain. That would be a lie. Life includes pain, not as punishment, but as part of the texture of existence. You will be misunderstood. You will lose things. You will love people who cannot stay. And you will face moments that challenge every ounce of your composure, but none of these things can break you unless you hand them the authority to do so. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "Fear is only inverted faith. It is faith in evil instead of good." Think about that. When you fear pain, you're placing faith in your own defeat. You're assuming in advance that you won't survive what life brings. You're placing more trust in the power of pain than in your power to move through it. But what if you flipped that script? What if you stopped fearing pain and began to expect it? Not as a threat, but as a teacher. What if, instead of constantly shielding yourself, you stood open, knowing that whatever comes, you're built to handle it? You must understand a pain is not your enemy. It is a revealer. It shows you what still has control over you. It shows you where your identity is still externally rooted, where your attachment is still conditional, where your peace is still dependent on circumstances. Pain introduces you to the exact parts of yourself that need to evolve. But only if you meet it with awareness instead of avoidance. This is why I say anticipate pain, but don't fear it. Because once you remove the fear, you stop trying to dodge life. You stop negotiating with the future. You stop delaying your voice, your presence, your boundaries, simply to keep things comfortable. You begin to act like someone who is not afraid to be disappointed, because you understand that disappointment does not define you, it develops you. So many people confuse emotional safety with emotional stagnation. They keep their lives small so they don't get hurt. But that's not safety. That's self-abandonment. That's the slow suffocation of your potential. And make no mistake, avoiding pain doesn't eliminate it. It simply ensures that when it finally comes, you'll be unprepared. You want to live boldly. You want to embody unshakable strength. Then stop bargaining with life. Stand fully in your experience. Let the hard moments come, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you no longer fear who you'll become through it. This posture changes everything. You'll stop overthinking, because you trust that even if you choose wrong, you'll learn. You'll stop people pleasing, because you're no longer trying to avoid disapproval. You'll stop chasing ease, and start choosing alignment. That is the shift, from fear-based living to power-based being. And it doesn't mean you won't feel pain again. It just means you'll never be defined by it. It will pass through you, but it will not possess you. That is what it means to act like nothing and nobody can truly hurt you. You stop fearing the wound, and start trusting the wisdom it brings. So I'll leave you with this. When you stop fearing pain, you start trusting your own transformation. And that trust will carry you further than any comfort ever could. There comes a point on this path, on the journey of becoming someone who lives as if nothing, and nobody can truly hurt them, when you have to ask the hardest question of all: what am I holding on to that keeps me fragile? Because the truth is, it's not the people, or the events, or the betrayals that keep us stuck. It's the story, it's the interpretation, the grudge, the fantasy of how it should have gone, the identity wrapped in pain. And as long as you carry those things, you'll never walk freely through this life. You'll be armored, yes, but not free. To act untouchable in the deepest sense isn't about control, it's about release. Release of bitterness, of resentment, of the belief that you were wronged so severely that healing is impossible. It's about releasing the idea that your value is tied to who hurt you, and how long you've suffered. Some people wear their pain like armor, but it's more like a cage. And you cannot evolve inside a cage, even if you built it to protect yourself. Florence Scovel Shinn said, "If one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get the situation he has prepared for." Holding on to the past, no matter how justified it feels, is a form of preparing for failure. It's bracing for the next wound, it's rehearsing the pain. And the mind is obedient. It will deliver to you what it believes you expect. You expect more hurt, more betrayal, more disappointment, and life meets you at the level of that expectation. But imagine what would happen if you stopped rehearsing it. if you stopped keeping score, if you stopped believing that clinging to pain is the only way to honor your experience. Because here's the paradox: you cannot rewrite the past, but the past is constantly rewriting your present, until you decide to stop letting it. Letting go is not forgetting. It is not excusing. It is not pretending it didn't matter. Letting go is the radical decision to no longer allow what hurt you to define you. It's choosing presence over narrative. It's choosing peace over righteousness. It's choosing the next chapter over rereading the same page. People think forgiveness is about the other person. It never is. Forgiveness is the decision to no longer carry what was never yours to begin with. You do not owe anyone your silence or your approval, but you owe yourself your freedom, and freedom is expensive. It costs you your resentment. It costs you your victimhood. It costs you your reasons for why you can't heal. But what you gain is infinitely more valuable: your energy, your clarity, your power to create instead of relive, and most importantly, your ability to meet the present moment without the filter of past wounds. That's where true strength lies. That's where you become untouchable. Not because you've never been hurt, but because you are no longer owned by that hurt. You must learn to grieve and release without dramatizing your identity around the pain, without decorating the wound, without using it as proof of your depth. You are not deep because you've suffered. You are deep because you transcended that suffering. You are not wise because you've been hurt. You are wise because you've learned how to let that pain move through you, without building a home inside your heart. So if you really want to act like nothing, and nobody can hurt you, start by dropping what you were never meant to carry. Release the need to be right. Release the illusion that healing requires explanation or justice. Life doesn't owe you closure, but you owe yourself peace. And that peace arrives the moment you decide: I am no longer a container for old pain. I am a channel for new strength.